Hello, I am Lee Camp. This is Eleanor Goldfield, and
You said that so angrily.
let me do my intro. I've been rehearsing this, and we next week plan on coming in with pyrotechnics to start it off. It'll be like, and then smoke, and then we'll land in our seats. This week we didn't. We tried to set it up, and ended up sending the cat like 130 yards out into a field.
And
so
Lee still has a stick of dynamite up his ass, so that might...
unrelated.
Oh, okay.
But yes, thank you all for joining us. Even though you're not here yet, you're probably coming
Let me
soon.
check.
Yeah, let's make sure we're actually live. Let's hope so. Please comment if you're watching. This is the fun part where we wait to see whether we're actually live. Yes, one guy is here on YouTube. So thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you for proving that someone's out there.
Hey,
Yay!
all right.
Okay.
Now we're talking.
Whoa. Hi. Okay. Sounds
it always
great.
takes.
Thank you.
Here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize about live streams is for the first 2 minutes, it's just you talking to yourself and you're waiting to see if people are going to get there. But when people watch this video later, they see those 2 minutes.
Right.
So then
Right.
you have 2,000 people being like, they look like maniacs. Okay. But
Well, to be fair, I think we look kind of loopy all the time.
more so during these. Thank you for joining us to hit things off and to let you know what our topics are. Obviously, the protests continue to rock the country in a pretty fucking awesome way, and people are having conversations about police that have been had in activist circles but have not been had nationally. Who knows? Maybe ever in a long time. Very important conversations. We want to, one of the topics, we're going to be answering your questions as well, but one of the topics we want to cover on this is the Innocence Project and what they do and, the people they're trying to free across the country, because America is, and I know we have people joining us not from America, although Jonathan is from Tennessee. But I know we have people all over the world, but America is the largest prison state in the world. We have over 2 million prisoners at any given time. It's 1 out of every 3 black men will ultimately be in the prison system at some point, and it's really horrific. And the Innocence Project helps get some of those out. So we are donating. You see a little $sign at the bottom. All of the Super Chat funds are going to Innocence Project. So if you hit the little $sign when you comment, throw in a couple of dollars, all the proceeds are going to Innocence Project.
I want to comment on that, but first off, I want to say that there's a Swede on here. Hey, Seth Hillside. I'm not going to tell you what that means. Anyway, oh wow, Reese, thank you.
Thank you, Reese.
A pear character holding his belly, laughing out loud. All right, cool.
That's her favorite pear character of all the pear characters.
But so the Innocence Project is a really rad organization, and folks might have seen on Netflix they have the Innocence Files. Which is a really amazing but also grotesque display of how our justice system works in this country. And so all of the funds that Innocence Project gets, they use to try and clear the names and release people in prison that are there under unjust charges. And Lee, do you want to, I know that you've been watching the show more regularly than I have, but some of the things that...
So by coincidence, but it worked out perfectly, the Innocence Project has a Netflix series that started before these latest protests. It's a great series. I'm several, like 7 episodes in or something, and it follows some of their successes. But obviously, while it's following their success in getting someone out of prison, it shows that people are locked up for fucking decades for shit they had nothing to do with. And it's almost always black people, because those are the people that are system. Wow, thank you, Jay Blood, $20.
Thank you.
That our system throws into jail for no reason behind it. We'll get to more on that in a second. But I want to let you know how much we raised last time. Last week we donated it all to community bail funds, which also helps get people out of prison. Obviously, that's a topic that's nationwide right now, which is why we're focusing on it so much recently. But last week, $675 ultimately went to community bail funds, which truly incredible. When I started these Super Chats, well, we both did 5 weeks ago maybe, I had hoped that these things would get $50 for these causes, maybe a week, maybe 100. And the fact that we're getting $675, which was our record so far, I don't know that we'll beat that tonight, but truly awesome. So community bail funds helping people with very little money get out of jail.
And I just shared the YouTube link. Someone said that they couldn't find it on YouTube. It's youtube.com/momentofclarity. And you'll see that there's the ability to add a dollar amount to your comment. And again, all of that money is going to the Innocence Project. And I haven't watched the same episodes as you, Lee, but I do remember there was this one podcast, I can't remember who it was for, but who it was by, but it was basically talking about how a lot of people, a lot of prosecutors use emotional response as examples of whether someone is guilty or not. So for instance, this guy didn't seem to be really distraught when he found out that his mother was dead. And so that must mean that he killed her, basically saying that you're not acting the way that someone who didn't commit a crime should act, as if there were one particular way that a person should and could act when something horrible happens around them.
Yes, Lisa makes a great point. There is no $ on the Facebook version of this. This is live streaming on Facebook. In order to donate and to be a part of the Super Chat, you have to come over to youtube.com/momentofclarity, if you want to type that in there.
I did.
Oh, okay. youtube.com/momentofclarity. Come on over here, and then you can partake in the Super Chat version with the $ next to the comments. The emotional state. I love that horse shit where they're like, well, and actually, a good example. Wow, $25. Thank you, Nick. A good example of this was Amanda Knox, that girl in Italy, where they ultimately she's now free and back in America. And look, I don't remember all the details of her case, but I remember she comes off as like slightly maybe Aspergery or something, where it's like not quite connecting on the emotional level in the way that that many people connect. And so just the fact that she was like going into prison, and I meant to share this, so just the fact that she was going into court, and she was smiling when she showed up to court, and all these people are taking her photo, and she's just like, and it's because she was like, what the fuck? And she's freaking out, but her mind doesn't really connect the way many people connect. And so you could just tell in her interviews that, yeah, when the cops talked to her, they were like, she's guilty because she smiled once.
Right.
And she didn't seem to be crying that someone had died. Yeah. And like, it's all that shit, which is horseshit.
This person makes a brilliant point. And Nick, I am going to get to the Seattle No Cop Co-op in a second. But Vienna makes a great point here. Emotional response varies. I'm autistic. I've never had the quote appropriate emotional response to most things. And that's a brilliant point. Right. And like, regardless of whether someone is autistic or not as well, obviously that's a great example. But even just outside of autism, the emotional response to things varies considerably. For instance, I'm not autistic, but in times of extreme emergency and stress, I am totally calm and like straight-faced, and eerily so, to the point that people have commented on before, like, are you okay? Because you're not showing any emotional response. So in an emergency situation, that would potentially look weird, you know?
Her hair was on fire one time, and she kept watching the sitcom she was watching, which I felt like, we should both be working to put out this fire in your hair.
Okay, if this was ever on fire, this is my pride and joy.
Answer Emily. Do you want to defund the police?
Yes.
And yes.
And I think we can get into that more. But I want to. Nick asked to comment on the No Cop Co-op. The autonomous zone in Seattle, if folks are unaware, it's basically in Seattle, the cops ceded one of their police stations to protesters. They left it. And organizers have now turned it into the autonomous zone, a no-cop co-op area. And yes, Carl, thank you.
Wow, $20. Thank you, Carl.
That's an interesting question. I'll get to that in a moment. But so basically this is a space that reminds me a bit, if there are any fellow history nerds in the area, when Paris was basically taken over by protesters and held for several days, I believe something like 3 or 4 weeks. But unfortunately, it was taken by force after a time. But basically, the idea of the autonomous zone is that it's a place of autonomy, and it's a place where folks, where organizers have come together to build an example of the kind of place that they want to have. So unhoused folks are getting supplies. People can go around and get supplies. Folks can also sell things. They've got some food trucks set up and things like that. But it's about centering justice, centering the voices of Black and Brown and Indigenous folks, of LGBTQ and Two-Spirit folks. So it's an experiment right now, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens if it can be kept in that space, if there's not an extreme amount of infiltration, which there probably already is. And that leads to infighting.
Two of the things you've mentioned were incredibly pivotal in helping to break up Occupy. One of them was you were talking. Thank you, Red in Economics. I like it.
Oh yeah. This cat reached out to me.
Two of the things you were talking about. One was the unhoused people down at Occupy. Obviously, there was a lot of empathy down at Occupy. Occupy squares in any city, but I was at the New York one. But there was free food, there was free housing, there was free, meaning tents. There was free blankets and clothes, and and homeless people from all over would come down there because there was a fucking square foot of empathy in New York City. Mm-hmm. And then news reports would be like, it's all homeless people down there. They don't wash themselves down at the park with the occupiers. Thank you, Donald.
Thank you.
And the other thing...
Helsinki, wow.
The other thing you mentioned is the infiltration. Occupy, by the end of Occupy, it was 1 out of every fucking 4 people was a police infiltrator, which, by the way, my next episode, Redacted Tonight, will be, the opening will be exclusively about police infiltration, long history of that. And they do multiple things. They try and find out what a group is up to and what they've been doing and what they're planning, but they also try and just stir up controversy, accuse people of things and watch others scream at each other, and all that shit is going to go down. So you have to have a very strong kind of core idea of why you're there and how you're going to handle the drama that will inevitably come, and that's the only way to deal with infiltration of cops and a situation like that.
Yeah, and Lene makes the good point. That's how it was at Standing Rock too, and there are still folks in jail that were basically targeted by infiltrators, and infiltrators do a great job of this. I've dealt with infiltrators myself, and they do a phenomenal job of getting close to you and preying on the empathy and the extreme desire for change. I wanted to highlight, now that you highlighted Standing Rock, Red Fawn is still in jail because of the charges brought against her thanks to an infiltrator with the FBI, I believe. And folks can actually write to Red Fawn in jail and support her in that way. And I believe you could just go to Free Red Fawn. I don't know if it's .org or something like that, but if you look up Free Red Fawn, then you'll find that information there. What is a Shiba dog?
It's this thing.
Elizabeth, thank you for the $5.
That's your Shiba dog.
Oh. Dude, you guys, these descriptions are banana pants. Anyway. The question someone had asked
about
who donated if psychedelics had any part in our political upbringing. No. And I'm not saying psychedelics. I came to psychedelics later in life. After I had already made my political shift, I did other drugs as a youngin'.
I'm pretty much a similar story where I came to all these conclusions before I ever tried a psychedelic. I just did this other thing which also opens your mind. It's called reading.
Oh, don't be a...
So, what? How was that a dickish thing to say? It was just funny. No, yeah, you can, here's the thing, if people really want to, and they really want to dig deep, and they really want to understand how our system works, you keep digging, and you find the people that are they have it figured out, and they're talking about it, and they're writing books about it, and you can get to that point without having done psychedelics. And that's, again, like Eleanor said, I'm not saying anything bad about psychedelics. People welcome to do whatever the fuck they want to do to their own bodies, which is my view on the law as well. do what you want to your own body. Now, obviously, I also am for regulation so that you aren't just the market isn't just flooded with fentanyl that's killing everybody. I think I would rather it be legal and regulated so that people don't just keep ODing and not knowing what the fuck they're taking.
I will say that psychedelics do help in sort of like I even when I was a philosophy nerd. I mean, I'm still a philosophy nerd, but feeling and seeing the world connected via psychedelics is pretty fucking awesome.
Wow. Thank you, David. $25.
So, just saying that, I definitely, there's actually a possible legislation.
Thank you, Elisa.
There's actually legislation being planned here, or it's going to be on the ballot here in Washington, D.C. to allow psilocybin. So basically, that's mushrooms. So basically allowing drugs that you can grow. And this is really incredibly powerful because psilocybin has been proven to be helpful, particularly with regards to things like PTSD.
I've been growing my own Robitussin and getting high on that. Does that count?
You're amazing. I believe that's called alchemy. But so that's exciting. So if you live in DC, I know that, people aren't always fans of voting, but definitely do vote for that because that would be awesome.
Thank you guys so much for donating.
Thank you, David.
I want to just remind everybody, all the money from this super chat is going to the Innocence Project this week. So every proceed dollar is going there.
Yes. So,
was there something you were about to tackle? I can move on to another thing about the Innocence Project.
Yes,
and these shit that gets people locked up for nothing. Many of the things, and I have fought against the death penalty for many different people. Most of the time, you lose. Occasionally, you get.
Oh, this is a great story.
Well, I wasn't going to tell that story, but occasionally you get lucky, like with Kenneth Foster. I've told it so many times. Like with Kenneth Foster, we helped save his life in Texas. But thank you again, Elisa. But with many of them, you lose, and it's really sad. But it's still important to have the fight to fight the fight. Cameron Todd Willingham is a good example of just a lot of this horse shit. Investigation, if that's what you want to call it, where detectives say this is so. The Cameron Todd Willingham in Texas, they executed him for setting his 3 daughters on fire in their home, in their trailer park kind of home, and the 3 daughters all died, and he was crushed. And they said, "Oh, he did this on purpose." And their explanation was, one, he had an Iron Maiden poster in his bedroom, which had a picture of Satan or something. So he was
It's not Satan, it's Iron Maiden's mascot.
So he was a Satan worshiper. They found, they believed there was, whatever you call it, a fuel, lighter fluid to set the fire at the front doorstep, but they didn't bother, the arson experts or whatever, didn't bother to make the point that that's where he kept his lighter fluid for his barbecue grill, was at the front door. And then they also said that he didn't seem concerned about his daughters because he moved his car out of the way when the firefighters were fighting the fire. Now imagine, you're a father, you're horrified, you've already tried to get your girls out, you can't, and now you're standing there and the firefighters are saying, "Leave us alone, let us do the job, you fucking go stand over there." And you think, what the fuck can I do? And you move your car out of their way. And they were saying that proved this guy wanted to kill his 3 daughters.
And also, there's been several psychologists and psychiatrists that have recommended in moments of, and this has been recommended to me because I suffer from panic attacks. If you're having a panic attack and you feel like you're going to really go off the rails, try to do something mundane, but that requires your attention. So, buttoning a shirt, or making a cup of coffee, or folding some laundry, or something that's totally fucking mundane, but that it shifts your focus. And so there might have just totally subconsciously, this father might have just been I'm just going to move the car because that's all I can do. unless I'm just going to lose my shit entirely. So again, like, this also shows how little our justice system gives a shit or appreciates human psychology. The human psychology that our brains are hardwired to avoid recognizing this immense amount of trauma in a moment like that. So again, circling back to that, you didn't have the right response. It's fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's yet another way that these people get put in jail. And with Cameron Todd Willingham, you had arson experts from around the country, around the world. You had so many people saying this is horseshit, and they ultimately refused to stay his death penalty. And these arson experts, they claim to be aspirin. It goes for a lot of things. It goes for arson evidence. It goes for the tooth bite analysis, which is a big one in the Netflix series about Innocence Project. It goes for blood splatter. See, and everyone believes the fucking horseshit television shows that we watch. And I admit some of them are exciting, but they believe, like it's CSI, that you get a tooth bite, you put it into a tooth bite analyzing machine, and then the computer goes, beep, 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 beep. The killer was Joe, and you're like, fucking Joe, I knew it. And they're like his incisor. It's all horseshit. They've shown, one of the people that they got out of prison after he was in prison for 20 or 30 years or whatever for killing a little girl, they found that the tooth bites they were analyzing on the body of the girl turned out to be damaged done to her skin by crawfish because her body was left in a swamp. They weren't even tooth bites. And then the head of the tooth bite analytical society, whatever it's called, sent out a poll to all of their people that were all involved in this, and they said, "Here's a sample of is this photo? Take a look at this photo. Is it A, a tooth bite on a body? B, not a tooth bite, or C, something there was some third choice, and a third believed each thing. A third, meaning of all the people who are tooth bite experts, they couldn't agree whether the photo was a tooth bite. So how could they possibly nail down who did it?
Exactly.
Who did? Oh, it was Carl.
Who done it?
Carl fucking bit that girl because we see an indentation here.
Well, and this brings up another good point, which folks in the chat are mentioning. Abolish cop shows, Jay Blood says. Dave Dowling wrote Obey TV. But this is a really good point, and it really speaks to how important it is to have not just shows like the Innocence Files, but also to have like fictional art. Or TV shows and stories and things like that reflect this kind of reality, as opposed to showing a world where, first of all policing seems to be these good old boy detectives that are just really doing the good work of society and keeping people safe. When in reality, what is it, like 15% of policing is detective work? The rest is basically just fucking oppressing and harassing Black and brown and poor communities.
Only 15% of police in any given department in America are detectives. The rest are stand around a corner. Thank you, Elisa. Another donation.
Yay!
Please,
killing it.
Please donate,
Thank
folks,
you.
If you can give something as part of the super chat.
Oh yeah, and Elisa notes that Elisa works as an advocate for victims of violent crimes, and investigative shows really mess up people's expectations of what the investigative process is. Very good point. And as Steve notes that Cops show has been taken off the air after 33 years. That is good, but still, like this little trivia for you guys here. Lee might not want me saying this, but he was in an episode of SVU.
I was when I was 24 or something, 26 maybe. No, 24. What was I going to say? Yes, Cops has gone off the air. However, I believe Live PD is still on the air, which is far more popular than Cops and far worse than Cops in certain regards. Live PD pretends to be live around the country, but what do they do to make it live? Well, a few things. One is they pre-tape some stuff and pretend it's live. But more importantly, these certain cops in certain cities with camera guys following them just know that there's certain drug doers in their town, because drugs should be decriminalized, but that's another story. So they just go to people's houses that they know do drugs, bust in in order to get something for television. You know, they know who to harass in their town because that person will almost always have a crack bite on them or something like that. So it really is just a full-on show of harassment, and it makes, suburban white people feel good that all the people that are not like them, are poor and often not white, are being attacked regularly by cops. It really is disgusting. So Live PD also needs to go off the air.
Right. Well, really, all of these need, and G makes a great point. Native Americans, Latinos, Blacks, and women are represented in Hollywood shows and films. Yeah, I mean, it's still, people talk about fair representation in Hollywood, and people point to like Idris Elba, and they're like, "See, you have representation." But in reality, the way that Black folks, brown folks, very much indigenous folks, if they're even allowed, and I can't remember his name, the director of Jojo Rabbit, who's also in.
I can't even pronounce his name.
I don't remember his name.
He is awesome.
But he is indigenous, and that's one of the first. I think it's the first time that indigenous person has ever won an award, much less been able to stand up there and actually legitimately represent.
That's apparently not true, but
he's not.
He's not the first indigenous.
Oh, well, that's good, but still, it's really atrocious, the lack of.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see the name.
Oh, I was about to say Dat Boy.
Dat Boy.
Dat Boy.
Someone wanted to change the subject, which we strongly encourage because we want to talk about a bunch of different topics while we're here. Vermont blues player. We probably won't be able to find it to highlight it, but Lee, what is going to happen when they start evicting and foreclosing everybody? It seems like the streets will be overrun on an even bigger scale when shit gets real for even more people. And I think you're right. I think that, that this country especially, although many countries have proven that there's the name, have proven that they cannot actually help the regular people. They can give away trillions of dollars to the big banks and Wall Street, but all they can manage to do for your average worker is give them a $1,200 check. And so, a third or something of Americans have lost their jobs? I mean, it's fucking crazy. It's the worst since the Great Depression. And as we see in the next couple of months, people aren't going to be able to pay their rent. They aren't going to be able to afford, many other things in their lives. And what are they going to do? We're really going to kick tens of millions of people out of their homes? Like, it's fucking disgusting. And if that continues to happen and our government continues to prove how corrupt they are, then yeah, I think you are going to see more action in the streets. I mean, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, people are saying that Live PD has been canceled, which would be good news.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
What was that? Sorry, what was the question?
He was saying, aren't things in the streets? Aren't people going to go into the streets even more soon when everybody starts getting evicted and kicked out of their homes?
Well, right, and this is kind of like this is the question of all questions, right? Like, what pushes people to that point where they can't take anymore? And if you look at history, I'm a total history nerd. What is. And I've written articles about this too that speak to, it's never about the bread. And that basically means that like the thing that eventually pushes people over the edge is just the last straw, right? So for instance, in the French Revolution, the people say, oh, it was the bread prices. Well, it wasn't just the bread prices. If bread prices were shitty, but everyone had like wonderful lives, under the king, then it wouldn't have caused a revolution. So I think that right now is a really unique time where things are just piling on top of each other in such a perfect storm kind of way, in terms of the coronavirus really highlighting the deep inequalities in our society, definitely highlighting the issue that we don't have access to health care. But of course, if you look at the people that are dying and suffering the most, it's predominantly Black and brown communities. And of course, poor communities at large, but, people are leaving the hospital after being treated with coronavirus with bills up into the millions of dollars. And this on top of the fact that people are dealing with unemployment and not getting anything, if even a $1,200 check, which is fucking nothing. $1,200 doesn't even buy $1,000 these days. It's atrocious. And on top of that, billionaires are making bank off of this. Jeff Bezos is set to be the first trillionaire on the planet in the midst of this pandemic.
If he keeps going at the rate he is. Jeffrey makes a great point that in 2009, and I think there's been some other points in our history, but in 2009, people refused to leave their homes, and the sheriff's department refused to evict people in certain areas. Basically, people stood together. They said, we're not letting this happen. We're not letting people get evicted. And sometimes the police or sheriffs will back down. Now, many times they won't, but people have to stand together. And there's some big examples back during the Great Depression where people in New York would set up whole city blocks that they said, we're not letting you evict our family and friends from these blocks. And it became, a decision for the cops and the authority figures of whether to do we really want to massacre this city block in order to evict a family out of their home.
Yeah, and Jay makes another good point here. Autonomous communities need to block and stop evictions, and this has happened. This has happened in the Oakland area. It's happened in the LA area. It's definitely happened in anarchist communities in Italy and Spain and things like that. So it is definitely something, and actually here in DC, just today, I believe, with the continued Black Lives Matter protests, people are linking them to the cancel rent protests and things like that, and understanding that all of these issues are intertwined, right?
Real quick, Watson's asking how to donate on Facebook. Unfortunately, the only way to donate is to come over to youtube.com/moment of clarity, and that is where you can donate. We can't do it on Facebook.
Unfortunately. And I just put the link in the chat, so you should be able to see it. It's youtube.com/moment of clarity. Sorry if you just said that.
Dave says 100 years ago, the 1% only owned 90% of everything.
Right, we're
only 90%, yeah.
Well, we have worse inequality than not just the Gilded Age, but the Roman Empire. We have more inequality than the Roman Empire.
The Gini coefficient, Gini, not Genie, which, by the way, the Gini coefficient is awesome, yeah, because he helps you get your wishes. But the Gini coefficient, which shows inequality in a society, we are now, wow, Nick, $25, thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick's really doing awesome because he's really trying to spur others to get their given in gear, which is pretty awesome. The Gini coefficient is worse now in America than it was in ancient Rome. So if you think we might be near a tipping point, that is a good sign.
And guess what?
a good sign in a bad way.
All empires fall. And Nick, to your point, how can we start autonomous zones in our cities? I think that's a great question. I'm actually not sure about how to donate to the autonomous zone in Seattle. If anyone has information on that that they would like to share in the chat, please do so. With regards to how to start autonomous zones, I think a lot of this happens rather organically, and I think that a lot of this has to do with also taking over unused or blighted areas. So, for instance, seizing unused houses. A few years ago, there was a report that came in that showed that every homeless person could have, 3 houses or something?
Well, no, right after the 2008 collapse, it was 6. There were 6 empty homes for every homeless person in America.
Thank you, Shane.
We could have given every homeless person 6 fucking empty homes for them to have for themselves. And my argument was, I got an idea. Let's compromise. Only 3. Let's give each homeless person 3 houses. There we go. How about that? Then you get to keep 3 for yourself, boarded up, doing nothing, and the homeless people get the other 3. How does that sound?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the creation of autonomous zones has to do with taking over these spaces that are clearly unused and could be used, and also taking over blighted areas. So, for instance, urban farming has been popping up in unused green spaces or, unused spaces that aren't yet green, and thereby creating community spaces and then holding that space and saying that this space belongs to the community. It doesn't belong to a bank. The banks are only the banks because they suck us dry. So I think I think that is a good way of starting these, to build these autonomous spaces. And I know that these conversations have been happening for a long time in communities. And again, now is a time when those conversations are really peaking because of the, again, like the layered trauma and oppression that's being highlighted right now.
Again, thank you so much, everyone who's joining us now. As you can tell, we're talking about a lot of important issues. Wow, Press Monkey, independent media, just gave $20. Awesome, thank you so much. I'd say we
agree with your comment.
I'd say we have about 400 people here right now between YouTube and Facebook. If you will take a second to share this on other platforms, that would be really awesome, so that we can keep growing those numbers. And I've noticed people, the people that are giving like $20. It would be really cool if like a bunch of people could give like $1. If you don't have much money, because we're not looking to break people's bank. All the funds are going, all the proceeds are going to the Innocence Project to get people out of prison. And so thank you all so much. But yeah, share this on other platforms so that we can keep growing this while the rest of the hour is going along. So.
Yes, indeed. Yes, hashtag mutual aid. We keep us safe. And mutual aid is a huge part of this, right? Mutual aid is a huge, mutual aid has always been doing this work. It's almost like there are two systems in parallel, right? There's the system that oppresses us and works off of not only our complicity, but our labor, and our bodies and our lives, literally. But then there's the parallel system that takes care of people. There's the parallel system that does keep us safe in spite of the oppression of the system. Yes, Brandon, agree. Let's hit that like button. Say hi to a broke fan. Hello. And yes, anybody who's watching who doesn't have the ability to give, we immensely appreciate that you're here and spreading the word. And please don't feel that there's a barrier to hanging out with us just because we're raising money.
I love that we have 400 amazing people here.
Yeah. Chuck, thank you for the $20 and the pear character dancing under a rain of confetti and taking his hat off to say you are amazing.
It's funny how when you try and explain a very simple, it ends up being a half paragraph long.
This is even better. Maki, thank you for the donation and the pear character with lovey-dovey eyes blowing red hearts in the air.
Thank you, Maki.
I love it.
With lovey-dovey eyes. And thank you, Watson.
Thank you, Watson.
$5. Appreciate it. Last week, by the way, we got $675 of proceeds to go to community bail funds. Truly incredible. The week before that, it was like over $500, I think $550 for mutual aid. So
no, for Appalachians Against Pipelines.
Oh, Appalachians.
But Watson, would you like to respond to Watson? How does America turn the murder of George Floyd into anything positive in a pro-war culture that will stop at nothing?
In a pro-war culture that will stop at nothing. Well, I think you're seeing a best effort at that. I think the protests on the street, people demanding a different, just world. This is how it starts. It's like you see the protests, and it's easy for me and Eleanor, people who have been doing this work for a long time, been studying this stuff for a long time. It's easy for us to see a sign that says, stop chokeholds or defund police, and be like, well, that's not enough. Okay, we need to completely rethink the way policing works in this country, because it's based on a slave patrol system, and whether you defund it to some degree or not, you're not going to really get where we need to be for what policing should be and how this society should work. Now, it's easy for us to do that, but these things come in steps, and you've got to get people, meaning a large number of people, to that end step. And so I think that this is, as long as these protests can continue, as long as the energy can continue and they can keep growing, this could be something very important. So I think that Occupy, people love to say, oh, Occupy failed. Well, yeah, it failed at the end goal of stopping Wall Street and corporate America, which is the most powerful force maybe humans have ever seen. But I think it very much succeeded in showing people a new way to think and giving us terminology and the language to be able to use to say we live under immense inequality. Without Occupy, there would have been no Bernie Sanders movement. There maybe even would have been no Black Lives Matter movement. Whoa, $50 from Heather. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's so many things that wouldn't have happened without Occupy. So I think the idea that it failed, quote unquote, is horseshit.
And I just want to also note, Tabby Cat, I love that you're using Google Translate, which is what it looks like for the Swedish translation. I'm getting that you haven't gotten your stimulus check yet. And that is a very disgusting and common story that I'm hearing from a lot of folks. There was something that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you again, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
She says, thank you for your work. You are truly warriors of good. Well, I think you all are. I'm so glad to share this. You know, we've been doing about an hour a week, and to share this hour with you guys each week is truly fucking wonderful.
Yeah. Somebody noted, I can't find it, but somebody said that they promote you in their trolling activities, which is awesome. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Watson. The mainstream media's mental gymnastics is amazing. Trying to say it's a few bad apples. Yeah, that argument really pisses me off. And we covered this on our podcast, Common Censored, where we talked about
which
the
is
history.
Free every week.
Yes. Where we talked about the history of policing, and the police are literally descended from the slave patrol. And the idea that you could decouple this institution from the incredibly racist, genocidal history of the United States is absurd. And it also speaks to a complete, and I shared, I believe on this live stream as well as on the podcast, I shared a quote from Christian Williams' book, Our Enemies in Blue, which is a phenomenal read. If y'all are interested and haven't read it, I believe
It's also a pop-up. Kidding.
It is a hell of a tome, but it is fucking awesome, and it is such a fantastic way to look at the history up to the present of policing and see how you can so easily connect the dots here and find where we started with the slave patrols and now we're here with the continued murder and really enslavement in prison of Black and brown bodies. So it's really not surprising, and it should be required reading for everybody in this country, because it really speaks to why defunding and in fact abolishing the police is not only incredibly important, but it's incredibly possible as well. So.
Absolutely. Here you go.
Carl, thank you. Thanks for saving us.
Thanks for
Carl.
saving us, Carl.
We were getting some dead air, which is a radio no-no for anyone who's ever done radio. Carl would like to know how you feel about college towns. I'll
tell you how I feel about college kids. Blah.
No, right. It's not their fault.
I'm kidding. I love college kids.
I don't.
I love making out with college kids. Hey.
Oh, God. If I could get you to do a gig in Oberlin College, would you be down?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a past life where all I did was tour colleges. So I have toured an endless number of colleges. However, when I became increasingly political, and then when me on Fox News calling them a parade of propaganda went viral, the colleges stopped booking me. So I'm rarely,
which is an amazing clip. Please go watch it.
So I'm rarely booked at colleges nowadays, but we would love to do a college gig.
And somebody just asked to repeat the name of the book. I just put it in the chat, but it's Our Enemies in Blue by Christian Williams. And I like college towns. I don't really feel one way or the other. Although I will say, when I'm in LA, I will still make the drive sometimes up to UCSB, so that I can get pizza at that pizza spot in Isla Vista. I'm just saying. Anybody who's ever lived in Isla Vista or knows UCSB, you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Soul Conjecture, for your $5 donation.
Thank you.
All proceeds tonight are going to the Innocence Project to get people out of prison who are innocent. Which, by the way, is a lot of fucking people. Okay? Really, it's tough. Until you start honestly looking into it, it's tough to imagine how many people are in our prisons right now who are either innocent or guilty of practically nothing. I mean, in certain states, like Louisiana is one of the worst. Louisiana, by the way, is our worst state for imprisoning people, which means since we are the worst country for imprisoning people, Louisiana is the actual biggest prison state in the world. But anyway, Louisiana, because they had the 3 strikes rule, there's a guy, and this is not just one guy, but I remember reading about this one guy, a guy spending life in prison for stealing a jacket. Life. Like, could be 70 years for stealing a jacket because he'd already been arrested for weed once or twice. And then the third time he stole a jacket because he was cold, and now he's in prison for life. It's that fucked up. And anyway, the Innocence Project does great work getting people out of prison.
Right, and that really speaks to the understanding of how people end up in prison, what they end up in prison for. You know, there's like the 3 strikes rule. There's minimums in terms of like sentencing minimums, which are absolutely fucking absurd. And it's this idea that surviving is a crime, and we see this. You know, hurricane season is upon us, and we're going to see this again. We're going to see the looters that are desperately trying to find water and other supplies after a hurricane hits, and they're going to be. I believe like there was one time where they were literally like a reporter called the cops on them because they saw them. Trying to get some water. Thank you, Watson. Trying to get some water from a convenience store that had been decimated in the hurricane. And it's this idea that it is illegal to survive. Because if you're poor, then you can't actually survive even before a fucking hurricane hits. But then you really have no way of surviving because of price gouging and just the entire infrastructure in this country is so fucking fragile to begin with, even without severe weather.
Well, and famously, you know, the mainstream media does such a good job of acting like looting during a storm is the most horrifying thing ever. And granted, it's not like I want people stealing televisions.
Whoa!
What?
Look at this.
What just happened? Whoa, Nick just says he'll match donations 2-1. That's crazy.
Whoa, Nick.
All right. Thank you, Nick. That's awesome. So everybody else, if you donate $1 or $2, it's going to be matched 2-1 by Nick. Nick, you're a fucking hero.
Seriously.
But what was I saying? Oh, so it's not like I want people stealing TVs during storms, but many people are just trying to survive. And the mainstream media has done such a good job of saying looters are supervillains that the American Sniper, remember that guy, Kyle, what's his name? One of the things he lied about, but he did it because it made him sound good and tough and awesome, was he said he went on the top of the Superdome during Hurricane Katrina and picked people off with a sniper rifle, killing people for stealing food during a hurricane. And granted, it was a lie, and some people did shoot people, but it was a lie. However, the reason that lie was working was because people were like, awesome, good job, man. You're a true American hero. Yeah. Are you fucking kidding me? That's a maniac.
Yeah. And to Steve's question, what else can we give besides money?
Thank you, Missy.
Thank you, Missy. Aw.
Wow, thank you, Leopard.
Missy says Hard Road of Hope was eye-opening and brilliant. Well done. Thank you so much. For those who don't know, Hard Road of Hope is my film that came out
Tell them
recently.
what it just won.
Well, it didn't win anything yet. I was nominated for
but it's
best...
an honor to be nominated.
Oh, okay.
Don't you hear them? They always say that. It's an honor just to be nominated.
But, okay. Best Woman Filmmaker by the Barcelona Planet Film Festival, so that's pretty cool. But you can check it out at hardroadofhope.com.
Which I'm typing now.
Which Leah's typing now. And it's about West Virginia and the radical history there and the amazing work that folks are doing there now in fighting coal and fracking and digging up this buried past.
Thank you, Big Meanie.
Build a better future.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Watson.
Oh, God. And then I was also talking about something else before this even happened. What was I talking about? Lee, what else? Oh, Steve. For fuck's sake.
You were talking about Steve?
I was talking about Steve. What else can we give? There are lots of supply
we accept
drives.
Cookies.
Stop it.
And lollipops.
There are lots of supply drives happening. For instance, there was just one in LA that was getting supplies for Navajo Nation, which has been the hardest hit area in the United States.
Thanks, Soul Conjecture.
So definitely look for supply drives in your area. There's definitely going to be mutual aid posts in your area. It's going down my website, artkillingapathy.com. Mutual aid disaster relief also has lists of local mutual aid efforts that are doing supply drives, not just for their own community, but again, for other communities like Navajo Nation. So that's an option there. Thank you. I know I'm behind.
Wow, $20
Watson,
for Modern
Jess.
Cave. Thank you, Modern Cave. And
yes, thank you. Moment of clarity with Lee Camp.
What just happened?
Eleanor's film is available at hardroadofhope.com.
Oh. You're doing great. You're doing great. Don't have a panic attack.
Yes, and Steve, you're making another good point here. Slavery is still legal.
Wow, thank you, Eric
prisoners.
Erickson.
The 13th Amendment says as much.
Thank you, Felicia. Oh man, Nick, it's amazing everyone's giving. If this breaks your bank, I will.
Yes, please don't feel like if you were drinking and that was just like, then please don't feel, or even if you're not drinking, because I am.
Wow, thanks, Carl. $20 from Carl, incredible.
But please don't feel that you're tied to that if you can't be.
Because Nick has offered to match everything in the next 10 minutes, but we're closer to 5 minutes now. But match everything 2-1.
Eric notes the importance of divestment. Yes, that is absolutely true. And there's a great organization that I was just telling a friend about today, actually called Freedom to Thrive, and they're a divestment organization. Nick is dead sober. Cool. Well, cheers. Freedom to Thrive is an organization that seeks to divest from the prison industrial complex and invest in communities. So it's really the conversation that we're having now with the defunding police, as in like, well, if you defund the police, what are you going to do with that money? I don't know, like anything. Fund schools, fund public health programs, all kinds of things. So this is really that conversation that we're having right now. So check them out at freedomtothrive.org.com.
I don't know.
It's on there somewhere.
Someone said that, I think it was Bob, said he's not drinking that much, which I'm sorry to hear that, Bob.
Someone asked what we're drinking. This is don't worry, I'm not going to go off my wine tangent. I'm a wine nerd, so I could. However, this is a Cabernet Franc from California, from Rancho Sisquoc, which is one of my most beloved wineries in the Central Coast. The Central Coast is a wonderful region of wine in California.
I've stolen some of her wine, and I can verify that it is red. Nailed it. Boom! Who says I'm not a wine expert?
All right, moving on. Yes, defund police, refund everything else. Exactly.
Wow, thank you, Proudfoots.
This is not a matter of just stealing from the police to give to other institutions. This is giving back to the institutions that have been stolen from in order to fund our own oppression. So yes, thank you, Proudfoots.
Yeah, I mean, defunding the police helps our world in so many ways. It decreases the militarization of the cops because they wouldn't have as much money for the giant military gear and the number of officers and all of those things, which would be good. But on top of that, it then furthers other areas of our society, such as, thank you, Skylar, $5, such as education. Because guess what? When people are better educated, they commit less crime because they're struggling less. And when they have better housing, they commit less crime because they're struggling less. And all of these things would be wonderful and connected to defunding the police.
So this is an interesting question, and one that I've gotten with regards to everything from coal miners to veterans. How can we employ the skills of former police officers if we defund jobs are lost? How can their skills and training be tapped elsewhere? So first of all, I think that everyone who has been a police officer or is a police officer.
Whoa, thank you, Ivan and Linda.
Needs therapy. And I'm not saying that in some sort of like, no, I'm really not. I'm really not.
No, I both agree with you, and I find that sentence very funny. Listen, if you're a cop, seek help.
Well, but I think that before we like retrain them to go into society, that they have to have therapy because they have been trained to be the servers and protectors of the state. And so to refashion that to be servers and protectors of the community is a very severe shift, and one that I think requires actual therapy and not just a booklet.
And many of them have PTSD from being soldiers overseas. Right. So on multiple levels, they definitely need therapy.
So I think that's the first issue. And then moving on from that, I think there are so many ways that, people who wanted to become police because they wanted wanted to make communities safer or whatever, then there are so many ways to do that. That you can actually become a social worker, you can become a mental health worker, you can become an EMT, a firefighter. There are so many ways in which people who
Thank you, Stephanie.
wanted to join the police and then became police.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Makes communities less safe.
Thank you, Vienna.
Oh, right.
Thank you, handsome Masood. Do you not want people to give?
I do.
Come on.
I do.
Join the party or get out.
But yeah, I think that it's incredibly important to recognize the wide expanse of jobs for people who want to keep their community safe. But I think that a very important interim step is to deal with the PTSD
Whoa.
and the training of these people.
$25. Thank you, Gary. That's awesome. You guys have really stepped up the giving. Thank you.
Yay,
You've been amazing.
thank you, everyone.
You're really doing awesome. By the way, I think I'd like to offer this now. If in the next, we'll say 5 minutes, we get $50, all money is going. Thank you, Gary. All money is going to Innocence Project. If we get $50 in the next 5 minutes, we will stay an extra 10 minutes so we can all keep hanging out. I'm willing to do that. And
so Gary, who gave $25, thank you so much, Gary. And yes, Lene, all of that. Is asking if there are any alternative news outlets doing stories on the autonomous zone. It's going down, has mentioned it. Unicorn Riot. I believe Mint Press News has talked about it.
Right. So,
but also, are they taking outsiders in? I don't think it's a matter of outsiders or insiders. It's really, if you're there to be a part of this community, then you're welcome. The folks that aren't welcome are cops, law enforcement. It's kind of like a mutual aid setup, from what I understand, that anybody who wants to be there and support can. So.
Yes. And what was I going to talk about? Someone was talking about cops abusing steroids. And I did a whole segment on that a while back, that 25%, the estimates, it's very tough to know because there's almost no drug testing. And I have a bit in my stand-up about there's no drug testing of cops. There's even no drug testing of cops. Whoa. Holy shit. There is Nick's 2-to-1 matching.
Oh my gosh.
That's incredible. Love it. Nick, you're a hero, and everyone thanks
Nick,
you.
Thank you so much. That's fucking amazing.
And thank you so much, everyone who participated in that with Nick.
Yes.
Truly, I don't know what to say. That's awesome. And thank you, Jim, also for donating.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone who's watching and sharing. And yeah.
What I was saying is, cops are not tested at all, and if you look at, yell it out.
Thank you. God. Thank you, Crafty Geek.
Cops are not tested at all. And it's like, how do we not even test them after there's a complaint of abuse? It's like, that would be the time to do it. It's like in sports, we test to see if people are jumping over little poles quickly because they're taking drugs. If we care that much for sports, for fucking dumbass, whoa, you threw a stick really far, let's see what drugs you're taking. Why not when a fucking cop kills someone? Let's see what drugs you're taking. Let's see how fucking steroidal your brain is right now that you decided to kill this person. And the estimates are 25% in urban areas are abusing steroids. And it's like, it's just an obvious thing, obvious step. Cops should not be allowed to abuse steroids because if you match up a police brutality with the side effects of steroid abuse, they match perfectly. Poor decision making, quick to anger, very violent. You go down small testicles. You go down the checklist. It's very clear.
Yeah. And
going bald.
Crafty Geek asked if we'd care to comment on POTUS's rollback of LGBTQ anti-discrimination rules in healthcare. Yeah, I mean, it's grotesque, but I think it's also important to note that despite the fact that there was some language regarding LGBTQIA2S folks in legislation before this, there is still absolute rampant discrimination, particularly if those folks are also Black, brown, and indigenous, and also identify as women or femmes. So I think that What's important here is to recognize that this was already very much embedded, this discrimination was very much embedded in the healthcare system, and that our healthcare system is broken for everyone, regardless of how you identify, but also in particular those marginalized groups. And I'm not saying that Trump is off the hook because of that, but I'm saying that it's important to recognize that there was very little to protect folks in the first place.
Now is your chance to mention your book. You said you wanted to talk about LGBTQ.
Oh, that's true. Oh, but now I don't have it. It's over there, I think.
Just
shit. Never mind. Never mind.
Okay. All right.
I'm reading this really, really amazing book, but we'll get to that some other time because this stuff is more important.
It's true. I think we're $10 short of extending for 10 more minutes. So if we get $10 in the next 3 minutes, we will go an extra 10 minutes to keep hanging out with y'all.
This is the question I wanted to highlight.
Yes, do it.
Annabelle, how do we assemble the appropriate boards of those educated adequately but not directly involved with law enforcement? Police can't investigate police. So one of the things that folks here in DC have really highlighted is centering the folks who have those experiences with law enforcement. So predominantly Black, brown, and poor communities. Really asking the people who have been targeted, what do you think needs to be changed? And then folks who haven't had those negative interactions with police being the accomplices and the allies of those people. So I think it's important to center the experiences of people who are directly targeted by police. And of course, that's not only Black and brown communities. Journalists are targeted, obviously like Indigenous communities, LGBTQ. And so I think it's important to center those experiences to understand the depth and breadth of police brutality in this country. And so I think that's an important place to start.
So two quick things. Well, thank you, David. And
thank you, Watson.
Watson's asking about, did I see Jesse on Jimmy Dore talking about third-party run? I don't know when that was. I know that Jesse has said he announced he might run as a Green Party, and now he said he's not doing that. So I don't know when the Jimmy Dore appearance was, but maybe it was more. If it was more recent, then maybe he's changing his mind or something. But he had said he's not going to run as the Green Party after all. In terms of Soul Conjecture saying Lee strikes me as an Islay whiskey guy, you nailed it. You nailed the exact area of the whiskey I like.
Interesting. How do you have some? That's a cool party trick.
Yeah. Although he might have seen the Ardbeg Cup on an earlier episode.
Lene says, I'm composing a letter to my county executive to defund the police. There are some great...
Thanks, handsome.
There are some great pointers from, I think it's defundthempd.org, because I know you're local, or local-ish, that gives some pointers on how to construct letters and things like that and what to include.
Thanks, Big Meanie. Big Meanie is talking about the fact that Redacted tonight for the full episode is switching to portable.tv, which is RT's free app. Anyone can download it. It's at portable.tv/download. It's not my decision. They want the RT in general is sick of the suppression on YouTube, as am I. It's really aggressive. But I will say this, we're not leaving YouTube, okay? Our channel will still exist. All of our clips will be online. Literally, you could watch the entire show on YouTube. You just won't see it as a 30-minute chunk. You'll see it in segments. And I know that's annoying. Again, not my decision, but I recommend everybody grab the portable.tv app if you want to see the full Redacted episodes. That hasn't started yet. It'll start in about a month. Big Meanie's saying that there's too much bleeping. The curse words are bleeped out. Whoa, $50. Thank you. Lynn Stacks. Respect from the People's Party. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It says there's too much bleeping. And thank you for letting me know about that. I will see if I can get them to not bleep it, but well, I don't know. If they're putting that one up, maybe that's a decision they've made. I don't know.
And I'm not sure if this is the same People's Party, but Lynn Stacks, if it's the Movement for a People's Party, they are awesome. You should check them out. And I didn't mean to directly then click this comment, but it is a valid point. Why do Americans get so excited about the vote when clearly the vote has been hijacked? Serious question. No, that is a serious question. Absolutely. And I think it's a great question because I think that it really speaks to the importance of not placing so much weight on a vote in a system that is so corrupt and where our vote is so easily manipulated and stolen. If you even have the ability to vote, because as folks know, then
thank you, Elise.
There's been so much work to purge voter rolls, particularly with regards to Black and Latinx folks. So I think that it's really important that we really talk about voting like it's something that you just do, particularly with down ballot stuff. Like I mentioned, the psilocybin legislation here in DC that can really make a difference in people's lives locally. But don't expect your vote in the presidential election to mean a shit bit. I'm sorry if that hurts people's feelings, but it's just true. We have to do much more than pay attention to what racist, sexist piece of shit is going to win the White House in November. And this pisses me off no end because your choices are really no choice at all. And that is by design. So I think that it's vital that we continue these kind of actions in the streets and this kind of organizing, this autonomous organizing in these spaces, as opposed to placing our focus on electoral politics. I could go on about that fucking forever.
No, this is something we definitely agree on, that electoral politics is something you should do. You should vote. You should definitely vote in local stuff because that tends to be less stolen and rigged and less owned by corporations. So definitely do that. But there's going to be more change. We're seeing more change across the country with policing from these protests already than we've seen over 50 years of people saying, vote for this person to change policing,
I'm writing in general strike for president. That's a good one. I like that.
And yes, I agree with, damn it, I lost it now, Chuck, who says, why is Israel training our police? Apparently a large percentage of American police do get their training from Israeli police, and it really has to do with Israel has, or in their view, mastered the ability to suppress and keep people down, and so now they're teaching U.S. cops how to do it. And
acronym TV
shouldn't happen.
Yay! Thank you.
Is that Dennis Trainer?
That's Dennis.
Hey, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis.
Everyone should check out Dennis Trainer.
Yeah.
Has one of the Dennis Trainer, by the way, we mentioned Occupy earlier, has one of the best Occupy documentaries, maybe the best that ever came out following Occupy, called American Spring, Autumn, something like that.
Autumn. Because spring already happened. So yes, we will end up with either racist pedophile rapist A or B. Yeah, and I think this isn't my line, but I heard it somewhere. It's what color MAGA hat would you like? Would you like it to be blue or would you like it to be red? Because it's basically the same thing. So I think it's really important that we recognize the choices.
I want mine to have the beer cans on each side.
Well, duh. Actually, could you get the Scotch cups?
I don't know. Scotch through a straw sounds a little rough.
All right, but these are rough times, Lee. We have to make concessions in certain places. So somebody had asked, what if fired?
Thank you, Bob.
What if fired cops end up as private security or militia?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, right. There's no saying that these cops will go to that mandatory therapy and become like these amazing humans. There are so many problems in the United States with incredibly what's the word? Overt and dangerous.
Biggly wiggly.
Biggly wiggly. With racism and acting on that racism and sexism and bigotry and things like that. So it's not saying that defunding the cops is the only thing that we need to do to fix society. It just means that having
Crafty Geek.
Having these people that are trained to kill instead of de-escalate and then handing them riot gear and fucking grenade launchers is not how you deal. It's not how you better a society. So removing those weapons from them, removing that training, and removing that institution of policing is a step, but it's certainly not the entire answer. And there are so many other aspects of this that go into making a safer community overall.
To to answer you, Crafty Geek is asking about how to reform juries in this country. What are the main components of jury reform? I can't say I've studied juries that much. I do know that the way it's set up now, you can often remove all the black people from a jury. The lawyers can, so that you end up with an all-white jury and shit like that. So it is kind of fucked up. But I think more important than jury reform, because very few of these things go to trial. More important than jury reform is stopping or seriously altering the plea deal system. How it works right now, 94% of state cases and 97% of federal cases never go to trial. Almost the entirety of them, because people are forced into plea. Even innocent people that never did the thing are forced into pleas by basically lawyers saying, well, listen, right now we have you on theft, and we're going to throw in terrorism because a woman said she was scared if you don't plea out. If you plea out to the theft, we'll give you 1 year in prison. If you don't plea out and we go to trial, we're adding terrorism on there, and if you lose the trial, you'll be in prison for 40 years. And so almost everybody takes the plea deal, because it's like, why would you risk 40 years when you can just serve the year? But of course, that means a lot of innocent people just go to jail because they're like, I'm fucked either way. I don't want to risk a bad trial and I'm in prison for 40 years or whatever. So it really, I think the number one way to change this system in terms of what goes on in the courts, or one of the top, maybe not number one, but one of the top ways is to change this plea deal horseshit.
Absolutely. And I want to comment on something Steve wrote, rhetorical question, which, by the way, if you write rhetorical question, I'm going to answer it, because that's how it's like saying don't laugh in church. I'm going to fucking cackle. If we give enough money, will we free people from the tyranny of money? I'm assuming you're being facetious, which is fine, but obviously not. But I have a spoken word piece called Hypocrisy, or I'm a Hypocrite. And the whole point is, yes, I am anti-capitalist, but I have to live in a capitalist society because the only way that I can get my message out is in order to live in this capitalist society. I could go live in a tree somewhere, but then I wouldn't have the technology in order to do my work. So I recognize that the technology I'm using is made from conflict materials. I recognize that I live in a system that puts profit over people at every turn.
We did personally mine the rare metals in this laptop and my laptop, but in general, we understand your point. But we did go get these. All right, we went. It was Tanzania, I believe, and they lowered us down on a rope made of bark, and we went and picked out. It took a while, but we got the minerals we needed.
Yes, Lee has very delicate fingers. No, but basically, yes, hypocrisy is a spectrum, and we all live on this spectrum in this capitalist society as anti-capitalists, right?
Thank you, Tabby Cat.
But we have to recognize that part of this work and part of this life is unfortunately recognizing that we have to embrace some of this hypocrisy. So you all giving money tonight to Innocence Project, yes, that is part of capitalism, but the Innocence Project is doing powerful work to combat racism in a capitalist society, and racism and capitalism have been, the dual beasts stalking this land for quite some time. So,
and if you take it even a step further, it's like we started doing these live streams. We did a few without the donation thing. I then heard that was a possibility, and I thought to myself, well, I don't want to collect money for myself during these things, but I do get that it adds a fun dynamic, it adds an exciting dynamic, and I thought the money could go to a good cause rather than to me. So that's why I decided let's come up with a new place to give it each week. And so it's like, we were going to be doing these anyway and everything. It's like, why not have it for a good cause? It's like, why shut yourself down? And in terms of the hypocrisy spectrum, this is a way that a lot of right-wingers attack activists, progressives. They basically say, yeah, we know we get to do all of these things. We get to use a laptop and we get to be a part of this capitalist system because we're not criticizing it. But you can't criticize it if you're using a laptop. Like they used to yell that shit at us at Occupy. Well, how dare they be at Occupy and have a cell phone?
And every pipeline protest I've ever been at, well, have you ever driven a car? Well, yeah, because I can't, this is your line, I can't fucking pogo stick around. Like, Jesus Christ. Old freaking Florida, thank you for the donation. And that's not me saying that. That's actually his name, as you can see on the in a dumbed down bumper sticker culture, do you think defund the police is the best marketing message? I do, because I think that it really speaks to the funding that the police get versus the funding that other entities get, like schools, like hospitals, like community spaces and efforts. So I think defund the police is a really brilliant bumper sticker message, and it also, like, again, a lot like Occupy, it gets the conversation going. Like, oh, what does that mean?
Right.
What does defunding the police look like? What does that manifestation actually mean? So,
I think you do have to take, I said this earlier, but it bears repeating. I think you do have to take steps to get your average American who is not an activist, does not study this stuff, watches CNN every once in a while, and that is basically the entirety of their news. You have to take steps to get there. If you just walk into their face and say, abolish the police, they go, what the fuck are you talking about? That's called mayhem. They don't get it. They don't know where you're coming from. So I think defund the police is a good kind of half step that gets people talking. And
Mr. Meepser, if I'm saying that correctly, notes the connection to the military. And as I was speaking to a veteran friend of mine the other day, Vince Emanuele, and he said, defunding the police is a step to defunding the military, which is it's true. And where do our police get their jacked up fucking weapons? From the military. So this is a connection there. You want to what?
So I want to answer Nick real quick because he says he's leaving and he has been amazing in this chat right there. Yay. He's been amazing in this chat. He's donated so much, and he's donated his time and everything. Nick, we will see if we can find a way to donate to autonomous zones, yes. But it may be quite difficult because we don't want to just donate to something we find online. We want to know it's legit, but we'll do our best.
So what will the fundraiser be for?
Next week.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Next week. We'll see what we can come up with. We are wrapping up here in a minute, folks. I believe you can keep chatting even when we end it, but maybe I'm wrong about that. You can keep leaving comments. For anybody watching this who is not watching during the live stream right now, you can still donate. Just go to innocenceproject, I believe, .org. Super easy to find, super easy to donate, and you can donate over there. This has been truly incredible. And what do we got? Maybe including Facebook, 500, 600 people watching. And we're trying to do this every week. It's always been either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and always around this time. Join our email list to find out exactly each week when it is. You can do that by texting the word redacted to 33777, or you can go to leecamp.com, and there's a sign-up thing for the free email on the side of the site. Also, everybody should check out Eleanor's new movie that just came out. It's at hardroadofhope.com. Super easy to go watch it there. And all the funds from tonight, all of the donations you guys gave are going to, the proceeds are going to Innocence Project. And, I can tell it's been a lot. I will let you know next week how much it has been. And the week before that, we gave $675 to community bail funds. So it's been amazing. It's wonderful hanging out with you all every week. I hope you will join us again each week for to do this. And you can be another donation. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Right under the line. I like how you waited and you were like, now's the time. Right under the line, $20. Awesome. Thank you again. Our podcast every week is called Common Censored. So if you want to join us for that, and your podcast.
Yes, my podcast is called Act Out.
Act Out every week, and you can listen to that for free. We do tons of free shit. It's out there, Redacted Tonight.
And this past week's podcast, I wandered into the nerdery to talk about magic and science. So join me in the nerdery.
And I covered the 16 facts about police in America that will blow your mind on Redacted this week. It's at youtube.com/Redacted Tonight. You can watch the full episode there. Can't thank you enough. You guys are
so
fucking
much,
heroes.
Everyone. Awesome. See you next week. Act Out.